Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Anomaly Ally. My name is Selah, and here we talk about the strange and unusual. From the Loch Ness Monster to the Bermuda Triangle, we do it all. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1. I am so excited to start this podcast. Now, today we will be talking about the one and only Bigfoot. Let's get into it. Bigfoot goes by many names, including Sasquatch, Wood Ape, Bushman, Tree Man, and Wild Man. He may go by different names, but one thing is for sure. He's one mysterious creature. Bigfoot is described as being covered in fur and looking like a large human. It is said they avoid humans and live in remote forest areas where they are active mostly at night. But how did Bigfoot get his name? Here's the story. In 1958, when the members of a construction crew building the road through the Bluff Creek area of a remote Northern California were thrown into a panic when their worksite was visited by an elusive beast that threw their tools and left footprints that looked like human, except much bigger. The local newspaper dubbed the unseen creature, you guessed it, Bigfoot. There have been many Bigfoot sightings all over, but most frequent places include Washington, California, which is where the first one was, where he got his name, Florida, Ohio, and parts of Canada. Now, I know I said the first official Bigfoot sighting, where he got his name, was in 1958. But there have been many sightings throughout history of an ape-like man. If we've been seeing this big fella since throughout time, why haven't we officially discovered him? Well, there are many different theories, including him being an interdimensional being that travels from universe to universe, him living underground and only coming up for food, him living in deep, deep forest. You might think that last one might be impossible, right? He would definitely already have been discovered if he lived deep in the forest. Well, you might be surprised. A new species of deer has just been recently discovered, but has been alive for thousands of years. Just been hiding in the Andes Mountains of Peru. I really hope I said that right. So if a deer can hide there, why can't Bigfoot also just be hiding? Now we're going to read some real-life encounters. And warning, these get kind of crazy. This one is titled Mysterious Intruder. In the 1860s, newspapers in Michigan reported the similar creature has been seen several times around Lake St. Clair region. A little later, in 1869, wild men were reported as having been seen in Iowa, while the Pennsylvania newspaper carried similar stories in 1874. One of the most detailed and interesting stories of these mid-19th century reports came from a hunter working near Antioch, California in 1869. Really hope I said that right. He had found a good site on which he pitched his camp, but soon noticed that while he was out hunting during the day, something had come into the area. The ashes of his fire had been scattered, and there were footprints that looked like those of a man, except for their immense size. Curious, the man decided to hide in a patch of bush which gave him a good view of his camp. After 2 hours, he was rewarded when a mysterious intruder arrived. The creature, whatever it was, stood 5 feet tall, 152 centimeters high, and disproportionately broad and square at its shoulders, with arms of great length. The legs were very short and the body long. The head was small compared with the rest of the creature and appeared to be set upon his shoulders without a neck. The whole was covered with dark brown and cinnamon-colored hair, quite long at some parts, on the head, standing in a shock growing close down to its eyes. After looking around carefully, the creature kicked the embers of the campfire, and then it bent down and picked up a stick, which it whirled around its head, producing a circle of smoke. After the glowing end of the stick had gone out, the beast threw its head back and whistled, after which it picked up a second stick and swung it around. After about 15 minutes, the creature was joined by another, a female, unmistakably, when both turned and walked past me, within 20 yards of where I sat, and disappeared into the brush. Time for another story. Get ready. This one is titled Midnight Attack. At midnight, the men were rudely awakened by a terrifying thump as something hit the cabin wall. The sound of heavy footfalls came from the outside of the cabin. Smith peered out through a hole between the logs to see 3 of the huge creatures. It also sounded as if there were others nearby. The creatures then picked up large rocks, which they began to pound on their walls, which prompted the men to grab their guns and prepare to face the beasts if they should break in. At least 2 of the apes got on the roof and began jumping up and down. Another began pounding on the door, which Beck braced shut with a wooden pole. After several terrifying minutes, the assault ended and the creatures slipped away into the darkness. Less than an hour later, they were back. Again, they attacked the cabin, trying to break in, and again they retreated, only to return with redoubled fury to the assault. Finally, as dawn broke, the creatures left. Ow! I just hit my arm. That past story was from 1924. I could not find the date, and I finally did. Okay, this is one of the most crazy stories I'm going to read today. It's a long one, so be prepared. I've heard this story before, and I don't know if I believed it, but we'll see about that today. This one is titled Captured by Ape Men. Cautiously, he poked his head out of the sleeping bag. At first, he could see little, because it was dark. But as the dawn came up, he could gradually distinguish 4 huge figures. They proved to be massively muscled, hairy ape-like men. There was a large male, who was clearly the leader, an equally large female, and 2 smaller figures. 1 male and 1 female. Otzman guessed that he had been seeing the mountain ape men that the local Indians had told him about, and that he had been captured by a family group. Recovering from his shock, Otzman reasoned that the creature who had brought him here must have had plenty of opportunity to kill him if he had wanted to do so. Looking around, he saw that there was a small area of about 7 acres, which was surrounded by sheer rocks, which had only 1 visible opening. The older male sat there as if keeping watch. Realizing that he was being left alone, Otzman set out to explore the area. He found a source of water. The younger creature had at first seemed frightened of him, but by the end of the first day they seemed more accepting. Otzman rolled an empty snuff box towards the young male, who picked up the shiny object with interest. When he found out how to open and close the box, the young male delightedly took it to the young female and showed her. Then he went to the older male and sat chattering with him for some time. Apart from being offered some roots and leaves to eat, Otzman was ignored, but when he tried to leave, the older male blocked his way and glared at him. He considered shooting his way out, but he had only 6 bullets and did not think it would be enough to kill 4 such massive animals. For several days, Otzman camped out with his kidnappers, which gave him plenty of time to study them and their behavior. The 2 larger creatures were over 7 feet tall, 213 centimeters. The younger one around 6 feet, 183 centimeters. All of them were massively built, with huge barrel chests up to 55, 137 centimeters, inches, and waists of 40 inches, 101 centimeters. Otzman guessed their weight to be over 600 pounds. Their heads were flat-faced like those of humans, but were small in relation to their bodies, and they met the body without a noticeable neck. They had low foreheads which sloped up to a peak at the rear, although some of this was made up of stiff hair rather than bone and muscle. Their teeth were big and strong, and although the older male had enlarged incisors, they were not big enough to be called tusks. Heavily muscled arms, longer in proportion than to humans, ended at hands that were very large, with short and stubby fingers that had fingernails like chisels. Their feet were massive in size, and the soles were heavily padded, like the pads of a dog's feet, but otherwise they were like those of a human. The creatures were active both day and night. They slept on what Otzman called blankets, sheets of woven bark and moss. Each day, 1 or 2 of the creatures left to search for food, bringing back grass, roots, and leaves. Otzman did not see them eat meat of any kind, but when they were not out looking for food, the 2 older creatures rested, The younger ones, by contrast, would play games. The male had a game in which he would hold his feet in his hands and then bounce along his backside, as if seeing how far he could get without touching the ground with any of his limbs. After several days of this, Otzman got a small fire going and brewed up himself some coffee. The smell attracted the two males, who came and sat down about 10 feet away from him. Otzman poured himself some coffee and spread butter on some biscuits as the two creatures watched him carefully. He ate and drank. When he had finished his meal, Otzman opened a new snuff box and took a pinch. The older male reached for it, took the box, and emptied the entire contents into his mouth. A few seconds later, he began to squeal and claw at his tongue. He rolled over and leapt up and dashed for the spring water. The other creature went after him as if they were worried. Otzman realized two things instantly. First, the exit from the low valley was unguarded for the first time since he arrived, and secondly, the old male might prove to be angry with him. Otzman grabbed his rifle and his bag of supplies and ran for the exit. He was almost there when he heard footsteps behind him. He looked over his shoulder to see the older female running towards him. Dropping his bag, Otzman turned and fired a shot over her head. The female stopped instantly and bolted in the other direction. Grabbing his bag again, Otzman ran out of the valley and continued over a mile before he paused. He then scrambled up a slope so that he could look back towards his captors. Is that how you say it? There was no sign of pursuit, but even so, he decided to take no chances. He walked all day, stopping only to shoot and cook a grouse before moving on. 2 days later, he stumbled across a small group of lumberjacks who took him in and gave him a meal before driving him down to their base camp. From there, Otzman was able to make his way to Vancouver. He never went prospecting in the mountains again. I would guess why he wouldn't. That would be terrifying. I would never do that again either. Okay. Those were some crazy stories. Now, we are going to look at some evidence. Now, there are many stories on evidence, and many are long and kind of boring, so I'm not going to bore you with the details. But there have been many footprints found that are giant, about 2 times bigger than humans. Nobody knows what they are, but many believe they're Bigfoot. I mean, what else could they be? Bigfoot has big feet. Makes sense. Now, some people would think that's enough evidence to know for sure Bigfoot exists. But some still don't believe. What do I think? My opinion? I do believe Bigfoot's out there. I don't know if he's an interdimensional beast or some sort of evolved ape-type creature. My guess is he's a different species that has yet to be discovered, that are very intelligent, much like dolphins. I do believe they're out there, but I'm still not 100% sure what to think. I know what evidence points to, and I know what I've heard and seen. But the question is, what do you think? Okay, thank you for listening to my podcast. Please consider liking and subscribing to support the channel. Have a great day and stay alert. You never know when you might see a Bigfoot. Side notes, I got most of my information from Bigfoot, True Life Encounters with the Legendary Sasquatch by Rupert Matthews. It's a really good book, and I would say if you want a more in-depth stories and things like that, more in-depth evidence, look at that book. It's a really great book, and I suggest you read it. Also got some of my information from the Discover Wildlife website and Google, of course. Have a great day!